What's up, guys? I wasn't gonna do a video on this, but I got several questions about this knife after I posted it on my Instagram page. I don't know how the lighting is gonna be in here. I had to fight with it a little bit this morning, as I think a lot of people know. I recently moved, so I'm having to kind of tweak my setup, but it's a whole different story. So what is this? This is a Sage 5 Spyderco with the compression lock. This happens to be the Blade HQ exclusive in M4 steel, as you can see here. That honestly is kind of the reason why I bought it. The Sage series, and I didn't know this until I picked this knife up, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but on the second part of what I'm about to say, but the Sage series, Spyderco donates a part of those proceeds to Alzheimer's causes. When I opened the box up, read the insert on this, I did not see that in the insert. So I don't know if because it's an exclusive that is not happening, but like I said, correct me if I'm wrong. So I said that to say my grandmother and several of her siblings died from dementia related causes. So Alzheimer's is something that, is kind of near and dear to me. So I've always been a fan of the Sage series for that reason alone. I've owned the Sage 1, the Sage 2, and maybe one or two others. They've always been good knives to me, never had an issue with them. The ergonomics are decent, all of those things. But also this, as I said, is M4, and kind of another Spyderco story. The very first tool steel, and I think most of you guys know I'm a pretty big tool steel, carbon steel fan. The first tool steel knife I ever had was a Gale Bradley. Nowadays people call it the GB1. At that time it was the only Gale Bradley, so it was the Gale Bradley. I even had it modified because you guys know the lock, it's a liner lock, and the way the lock is designed, it's buried down in there a little bit, and you have to really get in there to undo it. And that's because it was supposed to be a work knife, at least that's the way it's sold. And I actually had it modified by a buddy of mine, Fernando Medina, who at that time was a knife sharpener and a knife modifier, and now is a custom knife maker. So it's very interesting how little things can kind of turn into friendships and other things of that nature. So anyway, more about the knife. Yeah, it's a compression lock. I know I was having a discussion yesterday about the compression lock, and I have heard more people over time say they don't prefer the compression lock. What I usually hear about it is it pinches their hand, when they grip it. Some people just don't like having to reach up here. I know there was a left-handed version of the compression lock at one point in time. Some people say it's not intuitive because they're left-handed, so it's harder to work, because obviously if you're holding this in your left hand, you have to use your thumb, and it kind of puts you in a weird spot. So yes, I know that there are some people that don't necessarily prefer the compression lock. It's no problem to me. I have not owned a paramilitary 2 in years. However, paramilitary 2s are some of the knives I've owned the most of. I've probably owned, I would say, 20 plus paramilitary 2s. And I've never had any real issues with them. I have had some with very sticky locks. This does not have a sticky lock. It opens and closes very easily. It drops shut if that's a thing that you're concerned about. There's no blade play up, down, left, or right. It's very solid. And the blade, it's not perfectly centered, but it's good enough for a knife of this caliber. I guess I didn't say, because this is the exclusive, I believe the Sage 5 compression lock is carbon fiber. This is FRN, and what I believe they're calling mint green. They even put a stick of spearmint gum in there. So there's that. It does have that wire pocket clip. Honestly, this bothers me a lot more than the compression lock. I just have never been a fan of the wire pocket clip. I know a lot of people love the wire pocket clip. I like The retention is okay, but I feel like there's just too much play side to side. I'm not necessarily a fan of, you know, kind of that fold over deep carry style. I know a lot of people, they want to put a knife as deep in their pocket as they can. Where I live, that really doesn't matter, so I really don't need that, and I really, it's not something that I look for in a knife. Also, I feel like if there's a little bit of knife sticking out, it's easier for me to grab it out of my pocket, so there's that. And this is not a very large knife to begin with, so I mean, you know, I don't know, I would prefer a different clip. My favorite pocket clip of all time is the Chris Reeve Knives Sabenza pocket clip. It just works, and that's all I really look for. The tip doesn't stick up too much, so you don't scrape anything up. The titanium provides a decent amount of spring. Some people talk about that double indentation at the top, which kind of rides over the seam of your pocket, so that way you kind of get an extra level of retention. You know, I don't know how much that factors in or not, but some people like it for that. I did use the knife already. As soon as I got it, I had a box of dog food. My dog has food delivered on kind of like a set schedule, like a subscription service. So I did break down that box. I had a few packages to open up. Yesterday, I ended up opening up a package or two. So nothing really crazy, but as I was looking over the knife, you know, I don't necessarily look over the knife the same way when I'm using it as when I'm going to do a video on it. But one thing I did notice, and I'll see if I can get this to focus right here. I think you guys can see that kind of flat spot right here, and it's not dust. You can see right here by my thumbnail, there's a little flat spot right there, and I'm not 100% certain what that came from, because it doesn't come close to hitting any of these standoffs. And I didn't cut anything crazy with it, so I don't really know where that came from. It'll be easy enough to sharpen out, but again, that's kind of why I'm a big proponent of learning how to sharpen and having sharpening equipment, because if you guys watch Gerald Outpost 76 video, he's even mentioned several times, usually the factory edge is going to be the worst edge that you have on a knife, not necessarily the actual quality of the sharpening job, meaning how sharp it comes to you, but meaning the performance of that edge, how long it lasts, etc. So, and there are various factors for that. I won't even get into that. That's a conversation for another day that I'm sure Gerald could go into more detail, but that means I'm already going to have to put this on a stone to sharpen that out. Again, not a big deal, but that's why I'm a big proponent of learning how to sharpen. What else could I really say about the knife? Yeah, it's everything I expected it to be. There are no real flaws in the fit and finish, which I know a lot of guys revere Tai Chung for their fit and finish. You can see that belt satin blade, but you can see there's more of a brushed finish on the tang of the blade. There are no sharp edges on this finger hole, which I know sometimes can be a problem. Yeah, that's really it. I guess I'll talk a little bit about M4, even though now I'm 9 minutes in, but why am I a fan of M4, and why did this kind of make me a fan of tool steels? The Gale Bradley I had, and I did at that point in time, I was kind of treating my knives with oils and things of that nature. I put some frog lube on there, some Century Solution, some stuff like that. But as I've moved on from that knife, and like I said, whenever the Gale Bradley one was released, you guys can look that up. So that many years ago. Since then, I've moved on. I don't treat my knives with anything. If there's rust, I just deal with it. But the only thing that happened with that Gale Bradley that I had is inside of the thumb hole, like right up here at the top, there was a little speck of rust. And, you know, that's easy enough to get out. So I never have really had rust issues with carbon steels or tool steels. Also, M4, it's it provides everything that I look for in a steel. It is a steel that is has a lot of edge strength, meaning, you know, if I'm gonna use this knife hard, I don't have to really worry about a lot of chips and rolls unless I'm doing something crazy. It holds an edge reasonably well. Now, it will not hold a very fine edge, a very keen edge for a long time, but it will hold a toothy working edge for a pretty decent amount of time. You know, there's the toughness, but again, a lot of guys talk about toughness and they want to tout how tough a blade steel is. Keep in mind, when we're talking about toughness, we're talking about the lateral flexing of a blade. And if you have a folding knife, old guys will tell you a folding knife is a broken knife. And that's because anytime you have a hole, especially with sharp edges like the pivot or a thumb hole, that's going to be your point of weakness. So it does matter how tough the steel is, but these holes in your blade are going to cause the blade to fail probably a lot quicker than the toughness of the steel. So yes, toughness is something that is measured. Yes, it's something that can factor into how a blade can be used and everything. But I would also keep in mind, I would put a pinch of salt on that and say, you're dealing with a knife that has built-in failure points, be it the pivot or a thumb hole, or you see a lot of knives with pressed-in stop pins, you know what I'm talking about. Not thumb discs, but thumb studs. That's where they fail, because any hole is going to be a weakness in that blade, regardless of the blade steel. So that's kind of what drew me to M4. It responds well to a stone. It responds well to a strop. It can take a polished edge. It can take a toothy edge. Like I said, that polished edge is not going to hold up quite as long. It's going to break down into a more toothy working edge. But it will hold that edge for a very good amount of time and give you that edge stability that I look for in a knife. So that's why I'm a fan of M4, and that's kind of what pushed me more towards the camp of tool steels and carbon steels. I appreciate you guys watching. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.